welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a premium coaching to think clearly, lead powerfully, and live fully. And other than Mr. Dan Robbins.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here.
Welcome, Mr. Van on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Yeah, of course, Daniel. Thank you very much. Yeah, so my coaching is all about helping high performers reach their version of winning, right? That comes from my own personal story where I had reached levels of success that I thought should make me happy. I'd climbed the ladder in the way that made perfect sense. I was leading the international markets for a global consultancy, working with some of the world's biggest brands such as Google, Meta, Duracell, etc. Flying all over the world, living in nice places, living the life that many people told me that I should. But really, although the external success looked absolutely fantastic, for me, it wasn't the life that I felt that I wanted it to be. And so that leads me to where I am today. And I help people in very similar situations, directors, VPs, founders, CEOs, business owners, whatever it might be, that have achieved incredible external success to create a life for them that is 10 out of 10 now, to close the gap on what they felt they should achieve and create a life that they now really feels the way that they want it to be, whether that be more alive, more fulfilling, more exciting, whatever.
And Mr. Van Robbins, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And today let's talk about clearing mental clutter, the hidden step most coaches skip. So tell us, how do you define mental clutter differently from simple stress or a long to-do list? And what are the unique signatures?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Daniel. Look, I think the big thing for me is that most of the people that I work with, they aren't lacking in ambition. In fact, they have a huge amount of ambition. That's what's got them to where they are today. But what they are overwhelmed by is noise, internal noise, mental clutter, stories that they've been carrying for years. And so most coaches, most of the personal development world goes, okay, you need to add more, you need to do more, you need to be more. That doesn't ring true for me. Really, what I think is very useful to think is what got you here is not necessarily what's going to get you where you want to go. And so can we peel back the layers of what is holding you back? Why have you not got the life that you so desire? Become more intentional about the life that you want and removing the things that are an inhibitor to getting you there. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, Mr. Pan. So, what was the pivotal moment or experience in your own work that led you to discover this hidden step the other were missing?
Yeah, I think that it was a slow realization. It was no epiphany, right? It was just realizing that the life that I was leading, because the roles were getting bigger, the responsibility was getting greater, the pressure was getting more, the life that I wanted to live was getting pushed more and more to the periphery. I was having to get up earlier and earlier to get in the gym because I wanted health to be a function. I had to run back home to make sure that I got back in time to eat a meal before I could go to work. Relationship with my partner meant that was later on in the evening and more sporadic through the week. And so it was realizing that the life that I was living was not necessarily the life that I wanted in the way that I wanted it to be. And that's not necessarily to say for the people that I work with that they have to change their life quite as radically as I have. I now coach people to live a great life. I live in different parts of the world because that's the life that I want to live. But what is consistent for many of the people that I work with is that they've inherited old expectations. They've got old, outdated identities. They have beliefs that they picked up from childhood that still live with them today, and the pressures to perform are there. And if we can look at those and really examine, are they true for where they are now? Is that valuable for them? Does that help them create the life that they want? by getting really clear and helping them to put down some of that stuff, that does open up more capacity for them to step into the life that they really live. One thing that I say quite frequently is you can't build a 10 out of 10 life on a 6 out of 10 belief system.
Why is just teaching time management, goal setting, or mindfulness often insufficient of this foundational step has been addressed first?
Yeah, I think if we take specifically the time management thing, I think that we are often taught in the Western world that if we're not doing something productive, if we're not doing more, if we're not cramming more into our days, then we're not being productive. We're not adding back to society in the way that we should. I do think that taking space to find the opportunity for your life, to find where you want to go, to be a little bit, to allow yourself to be a little bit more creative, right, is an important step. And so time management in and of itself can miss the bigger picture. One of the books that we will talk about that I really love, Daniel, that we can talk about later is Slow Productivity. It's the idea that actually the people that were most productive, the people that did the greatest works of our time, are people that actually took far longer than we would be allowing ourselves today in the 21st century, right? And so it's understanding what are the components that we need, that we want to create the life that we would love.
On the mechanics and methodology, Mr. Ben, can you walk us
Mm.
through the basic process for this hidden step? Is it one time practice or something we need to return to regularly?
Well, as with everything, right, Daniel, it takes intentionality, and it's not a one-time thing. I'm not a believer in quick fixes. I'm not a believer in frameworks. The work that I do with people is completely bespoke, and it's designed entirely around them. So from that lens, every conversation will be different. But of course, there's an overarching way about how I think about things. And as I talked about space, slowing down before we move forward, that's why the foundation, the beginning point of a relationship with someone for me is a complimentary initial 2-hour consultation. 2 hours for most people is completely unthinkable, especially as a first step in a relationship from a coaching perspective. I'm giving that to people because I want them to come, be honest, get an experience of my coaching, understand what the journey looks like, understand where their life is and what can change for them were we to work together. And once we've slowed down, what comes to the surface are the stories that they tell themselves. Perhaps it's that these things aren't possible, that business is difficult, that I'm not good enough, right? Once these stories start to come, we start to understand what are the stories that are shaping this perspective in the world that you live in right now. And then from that perspective, we can then begin to clear those stories, to begin to challenge those stories and say, do they serve you for where you want to go? Are they valuable to keep with you? Or can we just say, okay, they were stories that you have, you tell yourself them for a lot of time, they're convincing, but they're not exactly valuable. So then it's okay. Now we've removed that baggage to some degree, or we've at least begun to challenge it. Then we get really, really, really clear on where you want to go. Again, I use the word intentionality a lot. What is the life that you want? People come to me and say that their highest values are their family or their kids or their health. And yet that's not where their time is going. That's not where their energy is going. That's not where their money is going. And so can we course correct their life in those perspectives and get clear on where they want it to look? And then it's, of course, integrating that, choosing a new direction, so that with that removed clutter, the kind of the path forward becomes a little clearer, and then we create steps and momentum to make sure that that happens for them.
Steps and momentum indeed. So, Mr. Ben, how does someone distinguish between a productive, important thought and a piece of mental clutter that should be cleared using your method?
Well, I think it's quite self-apparent in the way that I have the conversation, right? It's my job to sit here day on day and understand people's perspectives of the world. in many ways, I want to understand their world as much and as well as they do. That's really what I use the first 2 hours of working together to do, to step into their shoes and see their view. And from there, it is clear the disempowering thoughts. As I said, if you believe that business is hard, I work with a lot of business owners that is the frame that they come to life with. And so they might have wonderful businesses that make perfect sense, but they're doing it in so many different ways to make it so complex to themselves because that is the life view that they have. And so really it's about, can we change those disempowering views? And then, yeah, for sure, there's going to be ones that are a little bit more confusing. Do I want this? Do I have this thought for egoistic reasons, or do I have it because I think it's actually a very valuable thought to have? But it's then, yeah, it's teasing that out, and by the conversations that we have, it becomes clear again where you want to go. And you talked about productivity. Because we've got so clear on where you want to go, we've got so much intentionality over it, everything that takes away from that becomes a distraction. So does that make sense, Daniel? Does that answer your question?
Makes sense, Mr. Ben. These steps seems to you come before action. How do you help a client who is stuck in a paralysis by analysis to start this internal clearing process?
For sure. So Daniel, it's interesting. It's great that you brought that up. I think that there's two sides to it. Okay. So if someone comes to me, just as an example, and they're a little overweight and they want to start getting into some healthy habits in terms of going to the gym, something like that, to make it an easy example. Traditional life coaching, as I see it, or traditional coaching in general, will say, okay, here is your 7-step plan to make it possible for you to go to the gym. And as you called out, Daniel, action is very, very important. And for sure, even very early in our journey, we will talk about steps that they can take to try and take the actions that they want to get the life that they want. But if that underlying belief system is I'm a piece of shit, then getting to the gym is a breaking of their worldview. And so while we will attack it from one angle in terms of trying to find ways that make it easier for getting them to go to the gym, we also attack it from the psychological, the belief system perspective in terms of how can we remove that perspective so that that isn't the inhibitor. And again, I'm not a believer in positive psychology. I'm not going to be someone that says, look in the mirror, tell yourself 50 affirmations that you're great, that you're lovable, that you're these things. Because if you come from the perspective that that's not the way that you see yourself, your brain is just going to go, haha, see, this is just not true. And it's going to discredit it. But if we can remove, neutralize, bring into equilibrium that negative thought so that you're in a balanced place, it then isn't such a leap for you to be able to take that action. It isn't such a leap for you. It's not a breaking of your worldview for you to go to the gym. And then you've got the more neutralized view of the world. You've got the action that you want. And that's, for me, where real transformation takes place. That's where very rapid transformation takes place. And that's why I see such incredible results with my clients, is because they have the action, they have the belief system. And so everything is then rowing in the right direction for the life that they want.
Mr. Ben, what role do emotions play in creating and sustaining mental clutter? And how does your method address the emotional component directly?
Yes, emotions are very, very important, right? There's a line in a book that I love from a book called Letting Go, a book for you. And they talk about how every emotion has a corresponding 10,000 plus thoughts with it. And so clearly an emotion has the ability to trigger many different thoughts. And as a consequence, that will change how you think about things, which will change your actions, which will change your results. And so being able to understand that emotion and being able to get into it, if rewritten, can change the entire trajectory of your life. And that's ultimately what we would do. But at the same time, emotions are a pretty shitty reflection of your worldview. And so if you are going to run your life based on whether I feel like I want to do this today, whether you set your life up to say, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of it in bed because I don't feel like it, that's not going to create the action that you, or create the world that you want from you. And so again, it's about understanding, okay, I have these emotions. That doesn't necessarily give me the responsibility that I want. Okay. And so it's really about, again, the double attack. Okay. I've committed to taking actions. I'm going to take those actions. It won't be easy at the beginning. These actions are not always easy at the beginning, but I'm going to look at the psychological aspect. And again, together, we're going to get everything going in the right direction.
On practical application and results, Mr. Ben, for someone listening right now, what is a
Mm.
simple 60-second technique that you can share to use immediately feel effect of clearing mental clutter?
I wish I could give you one, Daniel, right? I don't think in hacks or tactics, right? This is deep work that we're doing. I'm going for long-term lasting transformation. The people that come to me say that one of their biggest fears is they don't want to wake up in 10 years' time and think, hell, where did that time go? I have regret now that I didn't waste it. And so for me to completely change their perspective in life, a 60-second tactic is not necessarily going to be that thing. But again, going back to the foundations, understanding that the thoughts you have are not necessarily who you are, understanding that the beliefs that you're having are not necessarily yours, the stories. So beginning to question, is this something that is true? Is this something that is valuable for me in this moment right now? That can be something that you can do on a continual basis that will be an important course director for your life.
Interesting, Mr. Ben. And can you share a story of a client who was transformed by implementing this hidden step after other coaching methods has failed them?
Yes, of course. One that always comes to mind, right, is a lady that came, when she came to me, she was quote unquote homeless, right? She was moving from place to place. She was actually, in the course of us first working together, she moved to 6 different places. She had very little stability in her life. She had gone down many different coaching routes. She had taken uh, therapy over a number of different years and was still in this difficult, turbulent place. And in the course of working together, her life has completely transformed. She is now living in Bali. She is also helping people that are going through transitions and helping them to find their value and their place in the world. And she is in parallel just about to sign a 6-figure contract to go and help on the marketing side of a large company. And so her life from where it was to where it is now is completely transformed. And again, the process that we went through is exactly what I've talked through in all of this. It's the fact that there were stories that were holding her stuck and holding her confused. We cleared those up and removed those. We got very clear in terms of what is the life that she wanted, where does she want, what does she want it to look like, what does her contribution in the world look like, and then put steps in place to make that happen. For her, one of the big things that she wanted to change her environment. She wanted to live in a different place. And so living somewhere that was sunny and could be with an environment of people around her that were more positive, etc., was a big step. And then obviously making the world of abundance in terms of getting such a great job is another step in that process. And so that transformation, I would say, is a really stark and amazing one. But I often get asked this question about what am I most proudest, or what is the transformation I'm most pleased about? And it's easy to talk about a client such as her because the transformation is amazing. But the ones that I really, really love that I don't get to see so much, quite ironically, is that when you change the perspective of a client, when you remove old language for them or old baggage or stories, and you begin to shift their life, the ripple effect of that is so profound. It changes how they speak to their partner, their wife, their husband. It changes how they speak to their kids. It changes how they show up in their businesses. It changes how they speak to their clients. And as a consequence, their world begins to change far, far beyond them. And for me, that's the most rewarding thing, although it's the thing that I see the least. But anecdotally, when I hear those pieces, it's just amazing to think the impact that has on the world.
Mr. Ben, this seems crucial for leaders and decision makers. How does mental clutter lead to a poor judgment? How does your method create a clarity in high stakes solutions or situations?
Well, it stops the second guessing, right? If you're trying to make a, an important decision under pressure, um, in high stakes environments, if you're clouded by the clutter of this is how I should react, this is I've got people pleasing tendencies, this is what the outside noise is telling me, you're going to hesitate to some degree, or at least maybe you're going to hedge your bets, or you're not going to act as quickly as you need. What I find with the leaders that I work with is when we work through this process together, they're able to think more clearly, they're able to act with more confidence, and then being able to be more deliberate as a consequence of everything. So again, it's not about removing your ambition, it's about dialing it up in many ways, but giving you the ambition and the ability to lead in unprecedented ways. And that sees them progress quicker, earn more, do more, but also in accordance with the rest of their life that they really love.
On the broader implications, Mr.
Mhm.
Ben, how does our modern, always on digital environment specifically contribute to the kind of mental clutter your method addresses?
Yes, this is a good one, Daniel. Um, I think I wrote about this on LinkedIn the other day. When I
Hmm.
lived in London before having this business and being able to be location independent like I am now, I was always under the illusion that more was better, more input. If I was learning, reading books, if I was listening to audiobooks, if I was listening to podcasts on the tube, if I was, reading blog posts, trying to get as much information in as possible, I was under the illusion that that would put me so far ahead of everybody else. And in many ways, that did serve me, right? Getting different perspectives is useful. But what it does is it clouds out your own viewpoint, your own way of thinking. It creates a burden and an overwhelm that is difficult to think through. And so that is the challenge of this today's world. We have so much input that your output is a bit muddled. And so, what I often say to clients, especially that have achieved a huge amount, have a little bit more control over their schedule, is can you remove some of that burden on yourself? Can you perhaps not listen to so many podcasts? Can you spend some time just with your kids or sitting on your own or going for a walk? Can you perhaps have a day of no meetings? Can you spend the morning thinking about what is the strategy for your business rather than constantly being in reaction mode? Those are not always easy steps to take, but I do think if you're going to create something lasting, something incredible that you're proud of, and a life that you look back on and say that was worth living, then those are the pauses and the space that you need to create the life that you want.
Why is this step hidden, Mr. Ben? Is it because it's the counterintuitive, uncomfortable, or simply not glamorous enough?
I don't think it's counterintuitive necessarily. I think that we know it to some degree, but it's clouded out by the fact of just all the input that we get, the polished reels that we see on Instagram and things like that. But you know it intuitively, Daniel. When do you get your best ideas in life? The things that I hear most common are when I'm on a walk, when I'm taking the dog out, when I'm in the shower. We know that these pauses are useful, but we've just tricked ourselves or been tricked into believing that they are not productive, that they are not valuable. And so, and it's also not something that you can necessarily sell, right? I can't sell you free space or lack of action or another gadget by saying, okay, just take a pause. And
Hmm.
so that's probably the fundamental part of it. It's not commercially commercially wise for me to say take some time. But in the context of the work together that we do, over the course of the time that we work together, finding space for yourself, finding space for your loved ones, finding space for your own life, that is essential to create the one that you want.
Mr. Ben, how does clearing mental clutter change a person's relationship with their past regrets and
Mm.
future anxieties?
Yes. So let me tackle the second part of that question first, right? I
Mm-hmm.
believe that your past experiences will shape your view of the future. Okay. So if you have had negative experiences in the past, as we all have, but if you're constantly labeling those that way and you are carrying it with you, that is going to be how you view your potential future. And so you are constantly going to be thinking, well, I'm trying to avoid that by trying to solve the future. And that is inherently what anxiety is. Okay. And then in terms of reconciling the past, the most common thing that I hear is that it should have been a different way, that I wish that something else had happened. Okay. And that is very insidious because it suggests that life could have been something else than it was, that it would have been better for me if it wasn't. And one of the steps that I take with clients is to realize that your life couldn't have been any other way, that it was the way that it was, and that's the universe is taking care of that, right? Without getting too woo, right? Your life has unfolded the way that it has. And so you can either try and fight it, or you can accept that there were lessons there to learn, that you would not be the person that you are today without it. And once you begin to reconcile it, it has less hold of you, which again then lessens the anxieties of the future. And so it's really understanding that the past is the past, that it happened, you've gone through the worst of it, and so now looking at life with a slightly different perspective and a slightly different energy as a consequence of that.
Mr. Ben, for the skeptics who might say that it's just a meditation by another name, how would you differentiate your approach?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily meditation. I think it's awareness, right? So I would say that there's similarities for sure. You are being aware of the life that you're living. Um, but a meditation is there. It suggests that you're sitting there observing. What I'm suggesting is a balance between those things. Yes, observing your thoughts, observing your feelings, observing your life, and saying, is this really how I want it to be? And if it's not, then it doesn't add any value for you to say, to continue to have the same thoughts and feelings that you have now. And so it's by them balancing actions. I can change the thoughts that I have. I can remove the stories and the lives and the beliefs that I've had. And as a consequence, I change an entirely different belief. It changed my world entirely, right? And
Mm.
so, yeah, perhaps there are similarities towards it, but for good reason, perhaps. Meditation is a tool that's been used for thousands of years to great effect. I just think this is a little bit more proactive. It allows you to take a little bit more control of your life. But to take a silly example, Daniel, right? If
Mm-hmm.
I gave you a seed for an apple tree, what tree would that seed turn into?
Of course, the same apple tree.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. So you wouldn't get annoyed, Daniel, if it didn't turn into an orange tree or a pear tree. But this is the same
Orange.
thing everybody goes through life with. I have these negative thoughts about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I I I don't like myself. I don't like my life, etc. These are the things that I think about all day long, and yet I think I'm going to create a 10 out of 10 life. That seems pretty insane to me. So I think it makes sense that we address the seed of everything, which is our thoughts and feelings that create our actions. And then once we've addressed that, then we can get the life that we want. If we want an orange tree, we plant an orange tree, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
an orange seed. And so, yes, it's about understanding what is the clutter, what is the perspective, what is the view of the world that you have now, and is that serving you for the life that you want to have? As I said at the beginning, you cannot have a 10 out of 10 in life with a 6 out of 10 belief system.
If this step is fundamental, Mr. Van, what is the impact on the coaching industry if it continues to be widely skipped?
Well, I think that I'm not going to be here to say that what the other coaching methodologies can't work. I'm never going to say that, right? There's a time and a place for all of it. And with me, there are times when we lean into the goal setting or the implementation of the strategy to make your life change, right? But I just think it's so much more difficult. As I talked with that person who wants to go to the gym, if your belief system is fundamentally negative or a disempowering view of yourself, it just makes that lasting change so much more difficult. You can get there through force, okay? You can force yourself to go to the gym. You can force yourself to get up early. You can force yourself to show up to work with high energy and do all of these sorts of things. But that becomes very draining over time. And we hear it in the language that people speak. I'm burnt out. I'm fatigued. I don't have any energy anymore. I think that that's because you've been forcing your life for so long. What I empower my clients to do is step into their power, to step into the energy of creation. And if you're in that lens where those belief system is no longer there, then suddenly you don't need to force so much, and you can continue this transformation for the rest of your life, not for a couple of months that you work with the person.
Mr. Ben, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, as well as love letters, music 101 and Movie 101 review, Science 101, Sex 101 in second season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health and Law 101, as well as Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Ben, finally, if mastering this one hidden step could give a person a single superpower in their life and work, what would you say that superpower is?
First of all, Daniel, you're prolific for doing all of those podcasts, so kudos to you.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
the superpower that you allude to, right, is
Mm-hmm.
the fact that it gives you control over your life. It's what
Yes.
I've hinted at throughout the entirety of this podcast, but let's nail it home right now. Rather than going through your life as a reaction, you are suddenly under the ability to create the life that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So many people that I speak to are saying, oh, my mentor when I was younger told me that I was useless, and as a consequence of that, I've got to prove them wrong. My parents told me this, so that made me become a CEO because I was always trying to show that I was good enough, that I had worth. That, again, is exhausting. And so what we do by liberating you from those stories, by removing that mental clutter, by removing the scripts that you've been living by, you then have the ability to create the life that you want, be intentional about your life, to think clearly, to be more authentically you, and be perfectly happy with that.
Well, Mr. Ben, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
For sure. Thank you, Daniel. And yes, as you can see from the screen that you've got up here, my website is the best thing to visit get in contact with me. You will see my LinkedIn is also attached there, where I do daily writings, daily thoughts, daily insights, and testimonials from my clients as well. So you can get a far greater flavor of the work that I do. And then, of course, for those interested, I always offer an initial 2-hour complimentary consultation so that we can slow down, so that we can get an understanding of where you are, where you want to go, and how we can make that happen together.
Definitely. One thing more I want to ask you, Mr. Ben. Can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey? But I almost forgot.
Yes, of course. There are so many books, and perhaps many books that you wouldn't necessarily expect, given my line of work, but I pull from so many different disciplines. I think Some of the more obvious ones are Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, an incredible book that gives you so much in terms of how having meaning in your life can really transform everything. The Surrender Experiment was also very useful for me to understand that the thoughts that we have are not necessarily ours, and we can let that past go in the way that we talked about. I think also The Man Who Sold His Ferrari, I think, is a fantastic book.
Yes.
Path was great for me, kind of from stepping away from my corporate career, etc. But I could go on forever about this, Daniel, but I understand that you want to wrap, so I'll leave it there for now.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ben, and looking forward for our next episode. More to come, people. See you soon.
Cheers, Daniel.